Hi, my name's Katie Halper, and we're coming to you live from Paste Magazine Studio, Paste Politics. And I'm here with Walker Bragman, who is a great journalist who writes for places including Paste. And I'm here also with the comedian Judah Friedlander, who has performed all over the world, really. And his latest Netflix special is called "America is the Greatest Country in the United States." So welcome.
It's really funny. You should check it out.
Yeah.
So
okay, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
You sold me on it.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the changing political comedy on the left, because back in like the early aughts, it was very much at the expense of Republicans and
Well, first of all, you gotta define left and right. I mean, I think one of the best propaganda that the right wing have is that the Democratic Party is left wing.
Right, as if,
and
if only, right?
And I think one of the best propaganda the right wing has is that Hollywood is left wing. I don't think either are left wing. I think
sure, but liberal.
You call
comment.
it like, I remember you calling it right wing adjacent. I believe in an
What?
interview I did with you.
Oh, really?
You called like liberals or Democrats right wing adjacent.
Yeah, I mean they're both right wing.
Well, but I
they're,
think
they're
this
better, but they're still right wing.
I think this is actually, just to clarify, maybe. I think this is in itself the issue, right? Like, what is left, what is liberal? I think there used to be less of a distinction because everyone was kind of in the camp of, like, Bush is bad.
Jon Stewart,
Right.
Stephen Colbert.
We were all uniting against the right-wing enemy. And when Obama was president, a lot of us, were defending him against the Tea Party.
Right.
And we kind of didn't do the best job of both defending him against racism, but also pushing him left.
And a lot of that humor, though, was at the expense
Yes.
of
Punching-
it was punching down at the voters, the Republican voters. Like, look how dumb these Republicans are.
Oh yeah, well yeah. I don't like that
You don't
stuff,
do
and
that.
I actually think when people say certain people vote against their best interests, I disagree with that. If you look at the if you're going to look at, I think there's two main power structures in the country. There's the white male supremacy
Right.
power structure, and then there's the corporate supremacy power structure. And so when people are making fun of, let's say someone's white, low income, and racist. Let's just
Sure.
say, I'm not saying all people are.
Right.
A lot are not.
Right.
But let's say a person is. And then they get made fun of for not voting for the Affordable Health Care Act or some other things that are just going to, if they're voting Republican, they're just going to sort of enrich the rich.
Sure.
And then comics make fun of those people for voting against their best interest.
Right.
But if you're someone who's a bigot and a racist, and you know that candidate running is a bigot and a racist, you're voting in your best interest.
Well, right. It depends on how we define interest.
They are. I mean, voting for if you're someone who supports white male supremacy
Right.
and you're voting for a white male supremacist, you're
supporting
voting
the
in your
system
interest.
that benefits you.
Yes.
I think what
yes.
happens is
and
that
I think most people don't see that, and they won't call that out. And I think you saw that in the last presidential election as well.
But something about your special in particular is that you focused on sort of broader problems that are systemic.
Yes.
And you didn't. It felt very much like you were punching up, and you didn't take it. You weren't smug. There was no smugness.
I think snarkiness and smugness and pretension is, I think that stuff is poison, in many ways,
Yeah.
and condescending.
Yeah.
When it shouldn't be, and the whole myth. That is, I think, another thing that a lot of people have the problem is, let's say they always vote Democrat, and let's say it's a Hollywood person, they always vote Democrat, so they're going to hate the Republicans. So many people have this sort of infantile look at the world where, okay, well, if the Republicans are the bad guys,
Right,
then
the Dems are great.
they must be the good guys.
Right.
And then the same as the opposite. So for the people who like the Republicans, they get taught that, the Democrats, they must be the bad
Right.
ones then. And I'm like, why can't they both be bad guys?
Yeah, exactly. Why? Yeah, be fair.
It's like,
yeah.
I remember, growing up, I remember being an
Fair
adult
balance,
and being a big
right.
wrestling fan. Other adults would be like, why do you like that crap? It's all fixed, and you really believe life's so simple and good guys and bad guys. It's like, wait a second. yeah, I know it's wrestling is an art form. It's
Right.
fantasy. You, in the meanwhile, are dealing with the real world, and you're looking at that
politics.
the way simple form of wrestling is.
Right.
So, yeah, I think most, and then the other thing that I don't like is the, calling everybody, oh, my queen, my bae, my
Yes, queen, yes, queen.
all this stuff of idolizing someone,
Yeah.
no matter who it is, whether it's Trump, whether it's Sanders, whether it's Hillary.
I actually,
it's like
I'm very pro. Not only because I do it, I
Yeah.
actually think that it may be counterproductive because there's this myth about Sanders having a messiah complex, which he does not. I truly believe Sanders would not be running if he didn't feel like other people were dropping the ball. think he doesn't
I
wanna
agree
run.
with you on that. No, I'm not talking about from the candidate. I'm talking about
Yes,
from the voters.
right.
So many
How do we not?
voters
He's so quick.
are always trying to look at one person. Like
Just careful.
and then-
She's got a shrine.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've
right.
seen
Yeah.
it.
No,
But I
no.
think the problem is, I think you're right, but the problem is that sometimes we on the left are critical, and I understand it. It's movements, not individuals.
Yeah.
But like, we can't totally reinvent the wheel. And whether it's human nature or whether it's a societal thing, like people like leaders.
Right.
And so we get excited when and he's really good at explaining the issues. But
Yes, but you always have to hold power accountable.
Yeah,
is
of
what,
course,
is what
yeah.
I'm
Well,
saying.
once he gets into power, we'll
Always.
have to do that.
Always.
But,
but what I'm saying, it's
yeah.
fine to be
No, and I know
a
you're
huge
Bernie.
fan of someone.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, it's this idea of, I think so many people take this thing, okay, we're gonna get Obama in there.
Yeah, no.
And then
it's
everything's
gonna be
everything's
great.
gonna be perfect. It's like that's not how power structure.
Right.
Every government throughout the history
Right.
of world, pretty much, is
Needs to be-
designed to
right.
oppress people on no matter what level it is. Any bit of progress that's
Right.
been made has not come from the top down.
Yeah, it's come
it hasn't
from the
come
demands
from the
from
power
below.
people
Right.
being all of a sudden, oh, we're great and we're just going to make things easy for you. They're designed
Right.
to inhibit your freedom and your
Well,
human
even
rights.
Obama said, "Go ahead and make me do it." He said that once because there's
Right.
this story which may not be real, but it's definitely instructive about FDR talking to A. Philip Randolph, and A. Philip Randolph telling him he wanted him to do something for civil rights, and FDR goes, "Great, now go ahead and make me do it."
Right.
Like politicians need to be dragged to the correct position because they need to be able, just strategically, they need to feel the heat. They also need to be able to point to their adversaries and say, "Look, my base is asking
Sure,
for this."
some
and
of
that
it's
pushes
political.
everything to the left.
Right.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Some of leadership is just doing the right thing, regardless of what popular opinion is. And
Or even if it's the wrong thing. I mean, there are
Just
leaders
doing
who do
something.
bad
Oh, of
things,
course,
but
yeah.
they still lead.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
you know,
lead to hell.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
but they still lead.
Yeah.
So yes,
You're
I
saying
agree with
good
you.
leadership.
Right.
A leader
Yeah.
should
Right.
lead.
So,
Whether they're bad or good.
Right.
They need to lead.
But
And
I
many
was-
politicians don't lead at all. They just play politics.
I was.
You should run.
Yeah, you should. World champ.
never know.
World champ. I interviewed Naomi Klein the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about how much. And I know I'm accused of being Bernie centric, but I think I said that his campaign really exposed a rift between the left and the liberal left. And she said, yeah, I think that. She said she thought the Bernie campaign did that, and also Occupy Wall Street. And the way she explained it was there were people who were liberal to the right of me, more centrist, and I thought it was because there were people who are centrist libs, and some of them were centrist libs because they really didn't think that the left ideas would be viable or popular, right? They didn't think stuff like that was happening.
I mean,
would be
you've had
possible.
the Democratic
And
Party
then-
leaders say
right,
that for
exactly.
a
But
long
then what
time.
happens is Sanders comes in, and now Medicare for All is popular, and the Fight for 15 is popular. So then this was like a reckoning because you had people who either expose themselves as actually opposing those things. So you saw people who were like, I didn't think these ideas were viable and popular, but now that I see they are, I'm moving left. Then you had people who didn't move left and pretended it was for pragmatic reasons that they weren't left. And now we see that they just
narrative is
oppose those
over.
things. Yeah. So I think there's really been a line in the sand. And then the challenge is, how do we create movements, coalitions, alliances without glossing over important differences?
Well,
Right? We need to build a big movement, but we also have to not compromise too much.
well, this is sort of getting back to the initial, I guess, where we jumped off with comedy.
I'm good at digressing.
and
just to let you know.
We all
no,
are.
it's
I'm
great.
very good at digressing.
But the typical Democratic base today, or what they've developed over the last decade or more, is college educated suburban white voters blended in with with lower income urban voters who are more diverse. And that's the coalition. They've lost a lot of working class whites. They don't turn out a lot.
They've
of
also lost.
color.
They've lost the black base has also turned out less.
Yep,
I mean, they didn't
consistently.
lose them, but they didn't come out as much. Yeah, because who did they have to vote for?
And the comedy that they are all watching
Right.
is this smug dreck.
Well, yeah,
that's-
I mean, I think most of the comedy you see on TV is very, it's very, for the most part, it's pretty lightweight stuff, and it's also
Low-hanging fruit.
It's very corporate friendly.
Yeah.
It's really kind of corporate comedy.
I mean, John Oliver, I don't know if I can say something critical about him.
You can
Is that
say whatever
okay?
you
All right.
want.
John, I just didn't want to make it awkward if you guys are hanging out.
There's
So-
awkward moments all the time.
Right, especially you, and you embrace the awkward. You create the awkward.
It happens.
But John Oliver did a thing where he compared AMLO, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, the guy who's now president of Mexico, he compared him to Trump, which is just so
I didn't see
stupid,
that one.
facile.
He's the first leftist in Mexico in about 70 years or something.
And it's like that whole stupid thing about the horseshoe theory. It's all just it's such a and he's smart, John
But this
Oliver. I
is-
don't know why he would do that.
This is the narrative I feel like that gets that for years has been reinforced by the liberal center, I guess, that liberals are smarter, their brains function
Yeah. Right.
better.
I used to
they
It's
they're
very
not as
elitist,
prone to
arrogant shit.
fear.
Yeah.
They're better educated. They're prettier. No, but like that's the
There's
that's
a lot
the
of
narrative.
classism.
It
There's a lot of
is. It's
classism.
entirely
Well,
classist.
hardly anyone ever brings up classism.
And
all
watching
these,
your
and all
special-
these,
they
all
say
these
you're
things
ignoring race.
intertwine.
Right,
Your
you can't
special
separate them,
was great because it was devoid of all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
There was no pretense. It was
Yeah, well,
real,
what I do,
and
I mean, I don't even call I don't know what people call, but I mean, what I do is satire. What I do is jokes. What I do is, it's commentary on world issues and human rights issues and, corruption and justice and hypocrisy of, government oppression and stuff. But, I don't call it political because I don't talk about like, oh, what did this position say?
Right.
And here's my zinger at that politician
electoral
to
politics.
make him get a frowny face. I mean, that stuff is, it's very trite kind of stuff. But also if you look at show business, the idea that Hollywood is this giant group of loony leftists, is really the minority. I mean, look at the.
It's actually Susan Sarandon's fault.
Right, well,
that
look
Trump
at the
is
attacks
president.
on Susan Sarandon
It's
and
so
how many
ridiculous.
people,
Yeah.
criticize her so heavily in a way that makes no sense
No
at all.
sense. She's
and is
the
not
one person in like one of the handful of people in
Lightning
Hollywood.
rod.
I remember
Yeah.
Michael Moore gave an anti-war speech at the Oscars.
Yeah, the Oscars. He had to have a
and he was
bodyguard after that.
booed
Yeah.
by the Hollywood
exactly.
actors.
The Hollywood liberals.
So if you look at Hollywood, look at the game of Hollywood. First of all the TV studios and the movie studios are owned by a handful of the biggest corporations in the world. Now we know that the biggest corporation in the world, are not. They don't care about justice, freedom, human rights. That's not who they are. So these are who those people work for.
Right.
Now most people in Hollywood, they have a much higher than normal degree of wanting fame
sure.
and
right.
power.
Right.
And the most in general. Now there's obviously exceptions, but in general, no matter what line of business you're in, the richest person, the most famous person is usually, there's a pretty good chance there's some kind of a psychopath.
Right.
Usually, no matter what
What?
business you're in.
You're
telling me that
You know what I
that
mean?
the
Well, who will
system
do
favors
who will do
Yeah.
anything
Ruthless,
to-
cutthroat, yeah.
and that's why we have the president we have.
Right.
I mean, I think it.
Right.
These things make sense. I'm not saying I like it, but and I'm not
Of
saying it's
course.
not dangerous, but it
That's
makes
just the way
sense.
it is, yeah.
It
has a logic to it.
So if you look at that, if you look at Hollywood, the people who really want to make it, they're not going to do anything to upset the system.
Sure, right.
They're going to do everything they can to kiss the ass of the
Right.
system. So,
Well, that's
and then
every
if you,
industry. I mean,
yes,
Right,
it
yeah,
is.
he-
But in
he was
Hollywood,
saying that, yeah.
anything
but in
in
Hollywood,
the
there's a
public-
lot of that. You know, like some jobs,
Right.
and careers, you actually have to be good at what you're doing. You know, when you get into show business,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily have to be good at what you're
And there's
doing.
also more glamour and fame and all that stuff.
be-
It doesn't exist in other industries necessarily. So
Right.
there's that other
Right.
ulterior motive and self-selection. Yeah.
Right.
Do we count media as show
And then,
business?
Well,
I
maybe that's a
think,
good question if we can.
you know, I
maybe
think
show business.
narcissism, we're getting another topic here, but I think narcissism is something that is systemic throughout society.
Actually, can we talk more about me?
Yeah, there you go. And
Katie, you are awesome.
yeah,
Thank you.
fantastic.
I am really awesome. One of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit was the focus of Hollywood and of libs, non-leftist, and you guys do very different work, obviously. You are a comedian and you are a journalist, but one of the things that you do is that you have shown really graphic images of the carnage in Yemen. Which you should definitely do a routine about. I'm just kidding. But you have
I'm
shown-
working on
Yeah.
stuff about Yemen. And, you know, most
well,
people in
you
this
could
country,
mock- exactly.
most
You
people in
could
this
mock
country
the
still don't know
silence
where
around it.
Yemen
Yes.
is or don't know
right.
about it.
And imagine if, like, people, I think you brought something up like this. Imagine if people who spend all their time fantasizing about Trump being arrested by the FBI and handing the country over to Mike Pence, if they could pause their fantasizing for 5 minutes just to mention Yemen. That would be great. Maybe people actually pay attention to this. But today on Twitter, Michael Cohen is trending. Lonnie Davis, his lawyer, is trending. Yemen isn't trending. Yemen is the country whose
And the vote's happening in the Senate
today, as
today,
we speak,
right now.
Yes, and people aren't talking about it. And this is like
Two votes are happening. There's one in the Senate and,
And
then there's
one
one
in
in the House
House,
to
right.
the Farm Bill that if it passes, there will be no action.
right
on
because
Yemen.
Paul Ryan is a psychopath, sadist, sociopath, evil person. Just because he goes like that.
Wait, but Ezra Klein said he was fantastic, I thought, right?
really?
Didn't he initially? I thought that was the thing. When he first came on, he was saying.
Yeah, he was like the good
Called him a
Republican,
genius
right?
or
Oh
something,
yeah, he
right?
was supposed to be the genius.
And now he's backtracked.
Fiscal thing. He's
Yeah.
awful.
I'm sorry, but do they ever get anything right?
Or
These,
do they
like,
ever have any
establishment
apology? Do they ever have
ass-sniffers?
to apologize? That's the other thing. Is there any accounting? Like, is there any accountability? Why shouldn't they get everything wrong when you don't have to face any consequences?
Well, right, but these are the folks that told us that like Clinton is the safe choice.
Right.
They told us that France made a great decision when it elected Macron,
yeah.
because it was like a redo of the 2016
that healthcare,
election
Medicare for
and
all was like
everything was
puppies
gonna
and
be fine.
rainbows.
But
They're always telling you to never vote with your moral core.
Right.
well, it's
You know.
never
You
vote
make
with
the
your moral
safe
core.
You
It's
know.
never
Which isn't.
it's never challenged what we tell you. This narrative that everything that wrong with the country, everything it could be distilled down to Russia.
Right.
Is another example
Yeah.
of this. It's like
Well, that's what
you need us.
the stand-up film I made, which is on Netflix, by the way.
You should watch it.
But anyways, one of the main themes of the whole thing is American exceptionalism,
Right.
and about how we're always taught we're number one. And when you watch the TV news, when you watch your candidates from either party, they always say this is the greatest country in
Right,
the world.
that's true.
And when we're having a presidential election, we're electing the leader of the free world.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I always
it's
wondered,
true.
well, how come we're the only country that gets to vote for the leader of the free world? And it must be because we're number one.
Yeah, exactly. One country, one vote, or not. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, imagine if MSNBC, which again is the liberal,
And also
channel-
Meet the Press.
oh, they're total.
Sponsored by Boeing, the second largest war weapons manufacturer in the world.
Yeah.
You know,
So what do we do? So Walker gets censored by Twitter. They lock his account. They deactivate his account because it deigns to show the actual consequences of the U.S. supporting Saudi Arabia's bombing of the people of Yemen and the starvation. What do we do about this? You got to pick up the baton. Make
Yeah.
this your next comedy special.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I think you
we
guys.
have a lot of wars going on.
It's true.
And, there are laws, I think in the last, the Iraq war was, they weren't allowed to show body bags coming back and things like that. It wasn't,
Yeah.
the news, they weren't allowed to do that.
And they
'Cause
had-
that- and think about
gentleman's agreement.
why don't they allow that? And that's
Right.
because they know if people see the horrible things
Right.
going on, that people might turn
And
against
people are
it.
paying all this homage to George Herbert Walker Bush.
Yeah.
And he, during the first Iraq war, which is praised as the good war, although it was terrible for the Iraqis and bad for the soldiers because there's Gulf War syndrome. They came back with all these diseases. That's another issue. But
wait, are you saying war is not good in general?
But they really say that was the greatest war ever, and it kicked Vietnam syndrome in the ass because now we didn't have to be ashamed of anything. But they had a woman, a teenager, she was 15. She testified in front of some congressional committee, said that she saw the Iraqi soldiers in Kuwait ripping babies out of incubators, throwing them on the floor, and then Herbert Walker Bush repeated that. It was a lie. It was a total fabrication. Her father was a Kuwaiti royal and an ambassador. But the media picked that up totally without questioning it. Even Amnesty International picked it up. Then they later on, they said George H.W. Bush was at fault for spreading that propaganda. But I mean, this is what, if Yemen were an enemy of the United States, if Saudi Arabia were an enemy of the United States, there'd be nonstop coverage of these starving children. There'd be nonstop coverage of the Saudi bombing. But because they're not, because they're like our side piece, and Israel is like our official wifey, and Saudi Arabia is our side piece who we keep hidden because like they are overtly bad, and Israel just like has a good face while they do their stuff.
Do they?
No, but I mean,
15-year-olds.
No, of course, but they have a better PR campaign, and they are. I mean, and they always talk about how great the LGBTQ population has it there, unless you're Palestinian, in which case you're like, the LGBTQ is like probably dancing on your body, But
also another thing that the news does is that they never really talk to the people. They don't go to Tel Aviv and interview the young people there, where I believe, I might be wrong on this, most of them are not for their prime minister. They're very critical of him. They just talk about the big government. Same thing like when they talk about Trump building the wall. The only criticism the mainstream media will be like, well, how are you going to pay for that, huh?
Right.
Why don't you talk about how does you just talking about that? How does that affect all the immigrants in this country?
Right.
What's the effect on that? Why don't you go, get out of your office here on 6th Avenue, TV news channels, and take the 7 train out to Queens and interview some people from the Latino community and see what they think about it.
Right. Also, all these media people are friends with politicians. It's really disgusting. They have ulterior motives. They don't want to upset their social scene. I mean, when Andrea Mitchell was like good friends with Hillary, and that was a weird thing for her.
I mean, MSNBC is 1 block away from Fox News.
That's a great metaphor.
Just so people know.
Man.
It really is right-wing adjacent.
It's 1 block away.
They're the Fox News for Democrats. They've figured out how to sell to Democrats. And it's endless scandalizing.
Yeah, they're obsessed with Russia. I mean, they did.
And I'm not saying it's all bad. There is some good stuff that sprinkles in throughout. I mean, even Fox News has moments where
that's the weird thing.
Where they do, every once in a while, Shepard Smith will do something that no one else is doing.
No one
that's
wants to talk about this, but Tucker Carlson, who's a terrible person and a bigot,
he's a white nationalist.
White nationalist, I guess. He will have good skeptical coverage of Syria. And because MSNBC won't, and no one looks into the allegations about Syria, and they just toe the party line, people on the left who don't want us to bomb Syria even more or do more airstrikes against Syria, they're forced to go on these right-wing channels because they don't have any other audience.
They are appealing to the left because there is the way I see it, the left and the right don't like the center very much.
Yeah.
They don't like each other very much, but they also really don't like the center. And the center is
pro-war, is hawkish.
It holds all the cards right
But
now.
also, I think that it's for the wrong reasons. Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham don't want to be abroad because they don't want to spend money like meddling in brown people's lives. Like, why would they do that? They're racist about it. But they happen to be like, it's pathetic that the left or liberals have so dropped the ball on being critical of foreign policy that you have to go to Fox News to see it. Or Amy Goodman.
There's almost no anti-war movement in the country. It's like, Code Pink does good stuff, but
also
I'm not an expert,
how would we know because they don't ever cover it, right? There's definitely no coverage of it.
I know.
And I mean, it's really pathetic that these people have made it so like Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham, who are terrible people, are where you have to turn.
Well, if they're the
Well,
only people that have you on, then
You don't
Right.
have to turn.
No, but I'm saying where you have to turn to find information about why maybe
Well,
we
I think
shouldn't
the
be invading
internet,
Syria.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm sorry. I'm
you
talking
know,
about
real news,
cable news.
the real
right.
news.
Yeah, the real news.
and-
Yeah, Aaron Mate, that we interviewed. He's not there anymore, but
Or
he's doing
other
great.
places to read.
No, but I'm saying like a joke. I mean, I'm just saying they've created a vacuum on the left, and they should really not be doing that
They
because
don't
whenever
want
you create a
anything- they don't
vacuum,
want
you
anything to do with the left because it's a threat to the order that they've
yeah
Yeah,
We
and,
need-
and I think it comes down to money. Their ratings are probably very good with
Russia.
with the very limited storylines they have
Right.
going on
Russia
now.
stuff sells.
So they stay on that. I mean, and again, that's what's going to happen in a giant corporation. You know?
Right.
And we've seen this, I think, across stations. Like if you look at like the TLC, the Learning Channel,
not
is
the
now,
hip hop trio.
now a home for reality TV.
Yeah.
The Discovery Channel has Vikings on it, which
No, you're right. Like 10 years ago, those channels were actually different types of channels, and now they're
Right.
all kind of the
Same,
same.
yeah.
and
channel,
the news channels now are like it's all infotainment, and
Yeah.
it's horrible, which is why we've been pushing these images.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
trying to get them out there, but I mean, there's very little interest from
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even
It
doing
needs-
comedy, in show business, I sometimes feel I'm just pushed way out to the side because they don't want.
Have you had pushback? Have you experienced pushback?
Well,
for your-
yeah, but then no one ever tells you why.
Right, they can't say that, but-
So there you can come up with ideas why. But
Right.
but I feel more on the fringes than ever. I mean, when you look at Hollywood, it's an industry of illusion, right? It's fantasy. It's creating illusions and fantasy. That's what Hollywood does. So they don't want a truth teller. They want someone who gives the illusion of being a truth teller. So they want a fake truth teller.
That's why they did two of those movies about magicians at the same time. What was it? The
Oh, I don't know
Illusionist
about
and the
that.
no. But what was it? A Hugh
But,
Jackman one and a
No, I remember there were a couple. They
and
always
a Christian
do that.
Bale.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is they don't
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
really want someone speaking truth to power. So
Right.
when you were talking earlier about your late night TV comedians and stuff, where it's very kind of soft or that's
yeah,
why
Jimmy
because they don't-
Fallon had
they-
Trump on and tousled his hair.
They don't want people who are really going to challenge
Right.
and be anti-establishment.
Remember Obama
Netflix is killing it, though.
Obama slow jammed the TPP. I'm not kidding. That's not like a joke. He really
I
did.
believe you.
What is Netflix?
I was just going to say Netflix seems to be hosting more real comedy. I mean, your
Well, I don't
special
know.
is
I mean,
theirs.
I made mine 100% on my own, and then I licensed to them. So I think the fact that mine got bought by them was kind of a fluke. I mean, right now
also-
they don't return my emails. So
Well,
Netflix return his
but,
emails.
They return
but-
those emails.
Yeah,
but
but,
they also have. I mean, they had Michelle Wolf. And they
Her
have
thing was
Hassan
great,
Minhaj.
yeah.
So they have. I mean, and this is all humor that doesn't punch down. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
Right.
great.
Michelle Wolf was really excellent. I thought when
There was
she
a lot of
when
smart
she
stuff on
did
that
the
Canceled it.
what was it called though the press
break.
what was it the Holly.
The White House
The White House
Correspondents'
Correspondents' Dinner. I thought she was great, and
Oh,
she
yeah.
made fun of Dems. I mean, she was like, do you guys have a crush on Donald Trump? I think you have a crush on him because you
Yeah.
were obsessed with him. You talk about him all the time. But she made a more systemic critique like you do, and not just like Dems are awesome and Republicans are bad. Now, I just want to be clear. We hate the Republicans. We hate the party. We hate the Republican Party and the powerful elected officials. We're not saying that they're not bad. It's just that the Dems aren't so great.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at countries throughout the world, I think most people are good and they want good things, and but the governments are
Right.
very corrupt.
Jeremy
in
Corbyn,
most
he's an
places.
exciting guy.
When you travel around, do you
Yeah.
find that most people are warm and just? I mean, what do you
Well,
find?
I should clarify what I said earlier. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what percentage of people are good and bad, but I know that the people who are legitimately maybe bad people are usually much more vocal and aggressive
Yes,
about it.
yes.
And there are many good people who just don't They don't want to get involved.
Right. Like AIPAC, right? AIPAC is a super powerful, well-funded, politically connected, the American Israeli Political Action Committee, right? AIPAC does not represent mainstream Jewish positions, but they act like they do, and people think they do because they are the ones who are always having politicians meet with them. Ocasio-Cortez just said she won't, which is great.
Right. I saw that.
But they are a silent minority. No, sorry, they are a loud vocal minority, and then other people just don't have the access to make their points. So we're much more we have to.
No, but I mean, even if you look at people on the extreme right, the very very vocal. A lot of them very smart, very aggressive, and then you look at left wing protesters.
Right.
You look at Black Lives Matter, look at Occupy Wall Street. I've been to those protests before. When you go there, these are great issues that they're fighting for. Yet there's not many people out there, fighting for it when you really look at it. So most people just don't want to get involved. They really. And I think that's like what you see what's going on in France right now, where you see a lot of people get involved or more, and and the public is backing them, and Macron's already made some. Made some changes, yeah. So it's like people, we have the power, but most people just want to. It really comes down. That's what I was talking about earlier about the Queen thing and the thing. Most people want a dictatorship. Most people they want a king or a queen, and they want to be like, oh, that's my person. I love them, and then they just go about their lives doing whatever they want. Then they let that person do it. But that's not how democracy works. Yeah. That's not how justice and freedom works.
I'm really.
It takes a little bit more.
You have to fight for it constantly.
Right. I have to say I'm very nervous because I happen to think that Sanders is the only person who could beat Trump. And I'm not saying that because I love him. I think that maybe if
you do.
I do love him,
and
I want to make sure I hate Tucker Carlson, by the way, and Laura Ingrams. I was critiquing the fact that
I
have a lot of hate. It's righteous outrage. It's righteous anger.
Well, I talk about it in my stand-up special. Hate wins.
Yeah, it does. So we just need to direct it at the right place. Like you were saying, both sides. Why can't we distribute it evenly? But not evenly, more to the right. But
I don't remember saying that, but it's okay.
No, you made a joke earlier on.
I don't remember.
Can we rewind? Just kidding. I'm really nervous about what the Dems are doing to already kind of smear Sanders because maybe if it were Rubio or Cruz, I'm not saying he's the best candidate for any race against Republican, but with Trump, I think the only person who has a chance is Sanders, and I think the Dems are already trying to.
I disagree. I think Trump has weakened some.
Yeah,
and I think he's going to weaken some more.
But we want to have the strongest person to run against him, regardless.
Yeah, and I don't know who that is, but I think
Mitt Romney and Joe Biden.
I think Sanders can beat him, but I think there's other people who can beat him too.
Yeah, we'll see. At least if you want to say he can't beat him and he needs to drop out, and you need to provide us with the name of someone who will. Trump.
Well, they've given you the name.
Oh, who? Mitt Romney and Joe Biden, right?
Well, Beto.
Beto, right.
That's the latest.
Yeah, who has outflanked Bernie on the left, they said. Anyway, that's the New York Times for you, which is one of the worst media sources and the most distorting and dishonest ones. They're just under the radar. Their lies are more subtle. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Judah Friedlander, you're world champ on Twitter.
On Twitter, it's Judah World Champ. I'm on tour now with all new material.
Yeah, so where can people find you?
I'll be making a new stand-up movie soon.
All about Yemen.
I'm going to make it myself and then see if anyone wants to distribute it, or else I'll distribute it myself.
Yeah.
And then, this month I'm mostly in New York City doing multiple shows a night.
So follow him on Twitter to find those dates, right?
Where are your shows going to be?
What's that? I don't have that much booked right now. I'm in the process of lining up a new tour. I did a 6-week European tour a couple months ago, and now I'm just in the city, and I'm trying to figure out where to put, how to make my next stand-up move.
And Walker Bragman on Twitter. I'm KT Helps, letter K, letter T, HALPS. Follow up, desanitize, the hashtag and the Twitter
It's
account.
frozen.
It's frozen.
It's still locked.
Go to it to see if you can, but you can still see things on. Oh, and my latest episode of the Katie Halper Show is on iTunes, SoundCloud, everything, and Walker's on it. It's really good. So thanks so much for joining us at Pace Studios. We will see you next time.